Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is December 5th, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast is Articles of Impeachment Cometh. Now, we're going to talk about some other things. I got some interesting data from Deutsche Bank that we're going to discuss too. But, we have to talk about this impeachment inquiry. It is history in the making, whether or not you agree with it. This is something that has only been done a handful of times in the history of our republic. A few presidents have been impeached. Of course, President Nixon resigned before he could officially be impeached, and most likely he would have been removed as well. That was a time when the country was a little bit different in its body politic. While their country was divided on many issues, Nixon being one of them, Vietnam, and a whole host of other social issues at that time, the country was not at its throat like it is today. Of course, I wasn't around then, but from what I understand, it's pretty bad right now, the way it is. Because like I said, we can't even agree on the facts. So Nancy Pelosi came out, gave a little press conference, made her speech that she is asking her chairman, primarily Jerry Nadler of the House Judiciary Committee, to draft articles of impeachment. I'm sure other prominent Democrats will be assisting in this process as well. At this juncture, we do not know how many charges they will lay against President Donald J. Trump. Some people are arguing that it should be very narrowly focused, specifically to Ukraine and what has been transpiring over the past few weeks with that investigation. Others are saying, no, you can expand this. It can go all the way back to the Mueller investigation and some of the things that might show obstruction of justice in that regard, as well as obstruction of justice in this regards to Ukraine as well. We don't know. But this is a quick timeline. The Democrats are moving quickly. We will see if Donald Trump is officially impeached prior to Christmas. That seems to be the deadline that the Democrats are headed towards. This is going to be on party lines. You have some Democrats out there, like one or two, that are at least saying publicly that they're likely not going to vote for the impeachment, but the Democrats have enough votes in the House to formally impeach President Trump. The Republicans, on the other hand, of course, going down party lines, they are standing with Donald Trump, and that is what it is. I wish there were at least some Republicans who would come out and say what the president did was wrong. This is basically, he did absolutely nothing wrong, which is 100% incorrect. He did do something wrong. He did something he should not have done. Now, you can have an argument that it doesn't rise to an impeachable offense, or if it's impeachable, he shouldn't be removed. So at least he gets sort of a slap on the wrist for being impeached, but if he has a fair and honest trial in the Senate, and the Senate moves to acquit, well, then at least he went through that, the phase of being impeached and having that on his legacy. Okay, you can make that argument, but you at least have to say that the man did something wrong, because he did. He never should have picked up the phone and asked President Zelensky what he asked him. He just shouldn't have. And you have to understand, you have to remember the timeline, because a lot of things, the waters are being muddied by everybody on both sides, because they don't want to focus on the facts, particularly the Republicans in the White House. They do not want to argue the facts. They don't want to do so because they can't, because it doesn't look good. And it doesn't look good because it isn't good. Okay? Remember the timeline. July 24th of this year, Bob Mueller testifies. The very next day, you have this infamous perfect phone call on July 25th with President Zelensky of the Ukraine. And you say, you know what? We've been through a lot. Look into 2016. Look into CrowdStrike, the server. Look into this company. And he mentions the Bidens. Talk to Attorney General Bill Barr and talk to Rudy Giuliani. He's a good guy. He knows what's going on. I still don't know what Rudy Giuliani's doing in all of this. Nobody really does. The president even wants to say, I don't know what Rudy Giuliani's doing. I find that very hard to believe, unless it's sort of, do what you got to do, Rudy, but don't let me know. Therefore, you have plausible deniability. That's a little sketchy too, don't you think, folks? Just saying, it doesn't look good. And what we know now, at least, is what's being reported, is Rudy Giuliani is back in Ukraine. He is back in Ukraine, I guess, continuing his investigation, trying to put some sort of documentary together, because that's what we do. I mean, if you want to find the truth, I guess, you just put together a documentary. Why don't you release exculpatory evidence if you have it? if you have it and we can just end this whole mess. Because it is a mess, regardless of whether or not it's warranted, whether or not it's needed, and I do believe it's needed. It's still a mess because we're not getting things done. People are arguing with each other. Again, you can't even agree on the facts. But the Republicans want to continue to muddy the waters. I understand this. This is politics. It's partisanship. That's what they're going to do. But why can't one of them come out and say, nah, he shouldn't have done it? He just shouldn't have done it. Because the timeline, folks, of having that July 24th testimony from Bob Mueller and then the phone call on July 25th goes to the heart of my question a couple weeks ago when all of this started wrapping up as far as the testimony was concerned with all of the State Department officials and etc. I said the question I think that we have to ask ourselves is, will President Trump do this again? Assuming he is impeached and acquitted, will he do this again? I lean on the side of yes, he will. And I have evidence that says that he would. Because he just went through a 2-year mess, a witch hunt, a hoax, everything that he called it, in relation to the Bob Mueller investigation. July 24th, Special Prosecutor Bob Mueller testifies. The next day, Donald Trump picks up the phone and asks the foreign leader about getting involved with Joe Biden, who is a political rival. You see what I'm saying here? It's not good, folks. This is showing a fact pattern of behavior of how the president behaves. Bob Mueller said that their report, their investigation, does not and did not exonerate Donald Trump. Bill Barr, the Attorney General, who was appointed by Donald Trump, and as far as we all know, at least at this juncture, Bill Barr is still in the good graces of the president. Bill Barr also made such a claim that report does not and did not exonerate President Trump. Bob Mueller went on to say that they knew from the outset that they were never going to indict Donald Trump. Why? Because there is a precedent that exists within the Department of Justice that says you cannot indict a sitting U.S. president. Okay? So you have Bob Mueller. He is not exonerated. You have Bill Barr, Attorney General. He is not exonerated. Who takes to Twitter but thunder thumbs to decree, I'm exonerated. I'm exonerated. That's what he does. That's what he does. He feels emboldened. He got away with it. He got caught with his hand in the cookie jar, but he got away with the cookie. He's going back for seconds. July 24th, the very next day, July 25th. You also have to recall, and we discussed this too at the time, there was that ABC interview with George Stephanopoulos. He asked the president outright in the Oval Office, Mr. President, if a foreign country or a foreign actor came to you with information or claiming that they had information on a political opponent, would you take it or would you turn it over to the FBI? Yeah, I'd take it. I'd at least listen. I'd see what they have. Maybe do both. Maybe do both. I had to think if they have information, I'd listen to it. This was during the Mueller investigation. This is how he thinks. This is what he wants. He was bashing them for 2 years. This has destroyed my presidency. This has taken up so much valuable time of my administration and of the American people, and the whole thing's a hoax and a witch hunt. George Stephanopoulos gives him a softball. Gives him a softball. Would you take the information? Yeah, I think I'd take it. All you have to do is say, I don't need it. I don't need help from foreign governments or foreign actors to beat these idiots on the Democratic ticket. I don't need it. I don't need it. And George, I just went through 2 years of this. You think I want anything to do with somebody from a foreign government when it comes to our elections? That's all he had to say. He couldn't even help himself. On this, I think he actually told the truth. Yeah, I would. I would take it. If they have information, I'd hear him out. So we know from his own actions, from his own past behavior, that he would do it again. And I think if he does get through this, and he most likely will at this juncture, and he gets reelected, which at this juncture, I'm still holding that as my base case, that he will be impeached, he will be acquitted in the Senate, and he is likely to be reelected in 2020. All that will do will embolden him even further, because he's already come out publicly on multiple occasions saying that Article 2 gives him absolute power. He can do whatever he wants, which is ridiculous on its face. He should understand this as a man of 70-something years old. as the President of the United States, that he does not have absolute power and authority. That is exactly what the Constitution was created to prevent, somebody from having absolute power and authority. You get it? He has already come out and stated that he believes he has absolute power and authority. Article 2 gives him so much power. Now, there's no question in my mind that somebody explained this to him, that Article 2 is where he gets his powers from in the Constitution, and that it is a very powerful presidency, because it is a very powerful position. But Donald Trump hears what he wants to hear, and he thinks he has absolute power. He does not. He does not. So if he is acquitted in the Senate, and if he is reelected, what do you think Donald Trump is going to think? He's going to think, I am above the law. I can get away with anything. I can talk to whoever I want. I can ask any favor from anybody I want, because we've already been down this road. And I'll just say, look, I went through this before. You didn't get me then. You're not going to get me now. The only thing that's different potentially next time is he doesn't have to worry about reelection, which you can make an argument that makes it even more dangerous. So we're going to have to see here, folks, because I think a new argument, not a defense, but an argument that's going to be coming from the Republicans and the White House, and we're already starting to see this, is that this impeachment is nullifying an election. No, I don't agree with that argument. It's not a defense because it doesn't deal with the facts of the case. In fact, it's purposefully a distraction from the facts of the case, because if you take an objective look at the facts of this case as we know them right now, albeit one-sided, but guess what? Donald Trump isn't releasing anything. So that's his doing, okay, which could go up to obstruction. So that's his own doing. If he has exculpatory evidence, release it and let's get this whole thing over with. Hasn't done so. It would be the easiest thing ever to do it, but has not done so. So I just think that the Republicans are now walking down this line of, well, it's nullifying an election, let the people decide. And guess what? That's going to hold a lot of water, because this isn't a criminal proceeding. This is not in a court of law. This is in the court of public opinion. So that's going to hold a lot of water. I think that's going to give a lot of Republicans who might actually secretly or personally think that what the president did was wrong, some cover to say, well, I don't know. The House already impeached him, so he should have learned that. That's going to be a stain on his legacy. But we have an election coming up in 11 months. Let the people decide. And they can fall back on that. And they can just say, I'm going to let the people decide. That's going to give a lot of people cover. So that's going to help Donald Trump, I think, get some people, unless there is some further damning information that comes out that just is, beyond the pale. Maybe you get somebody who comes forward and testifies, someone like a John Bolton or somebody like that really can, be the final death knell, if you will, in all of this. But that remains to be seen. But that at this juncture, that's what the Republicans are going to be arguing, that, look, we have an election coming up, let the people decide. So that's where I'm sort of still struggling. But I go back to that same question. Do you let the people decide? Because impeachment is a remedy. That's why the founders put it in there, because you cannot have somebody who thinks that their office, their presidency, gives them absolute power and authority. That's why there is the remedy of impeachment. Ideally, we want everything to be settled through elections. That's our constitutional republic, the will of the people. But there can be occasions where something might be so egregious or an abuse of power where the people, through the representatives, have the process of impeachment to remedy it. Not to nullify an election, but to remedy an abuse of power. And I do believe there has been an abuse of power. But again, I go back to the question, will he do it again? And that is where you sort of have to straddle the line, is to say, well, if he's going to do it again, then can you risk the election? Because people don't care about the facts. They don't care about the facts. There's supposed to be adults in the room somewhere. I mean, they're not in the White House. They're not in Congress. They're not in the general public. So who do you pick? Who gets to make the decision? Because this isn't good, is what I'm trying to tell you. None of this is good. We've been told for 2.5, 3 years now that Donald Trump, I got information on everybody. The deep state, all I have to do is declassify a few documents and everybody's dead to rights. All I got to do. Well, then why are you asking help from a president of Ukraine? It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The defense that has been put on by the Republicans has fallen apart. We went through that piece by piece. The impeachment circus that took place yesterday in the House Judiciary Committee meant virtually nothing. I mean, if you have an interest in civics, it might have been interesting to hear from 4 different legal scholars on the history of our Constitution, sort of the thought process that went into the founders, that was going through their minds at the time as to why have impeachment or anything else as far as the Constitution was concerned. That was interesting. But as far as something being factual, they are not fact witnesses to what Donald Trump did or did not do. They're just there to give their expert opinion on the process of impeachment and why impeachment exists. So again, with that lawyer from Stanford coming out and making that stupid comment about Donald Trump's son, again, that went to muddy the waters. It's nothing to do with the facts. Just goes to muddy the waters. I'm doing my best to stay as focused as possible. Everybody wants to go out in left field, right field, and stay in their respective silo. Call balls and strikes as you see them and stay focused. Because our republic, in one way or another, is at stake here. It is at stake. Whether because it's an abuse of power by a president, and Donald Trump isn't the first one to do this, ladies and gentlemen. He's not the first one to abuse his powers, believe me. And Congress, they too might be, sort of skating a thin line here too, with potentially abusing their powers. And don't forget, I think in a few days we're supposed to get the Inspector General's report from the Justice Department in regards to the FISA abuse and Spygate and all that stuff, sort of the genesis of looking into Donald J. Trump and company and this whole Russia thing. So we'll see if anything comes out of that, and we will keep you posted. Now, in regards to some of the Deutsche Bank data that I came across today, I thought this was very interesting, but it shouldn't be surprising to anybody listening. U.S. median age of homebuyers. Okay, the U.S. median age of homebuyers is up from 31 years of age to 47. From 31 years of age to 47 years old. And this data goes back from 1981 to today. So the median age back in 1981 was 31. Today, it is 47 years old. That is ridiculous. It's an increase of 50%. That is ridiculous. Only a handful of years ago, since the great financial crisis, it went up by 8 years. By 8 years. From 39 years of age to 47. This is basically a lost generation, folks. Something that we've been talking about here since this podcast has been online all the way back in February of this year. It's too much debt. There's too much debt. Low interest rates, this is what this has done. This has priced people out of the market. I've stated this many times before. People simply think because they can, quote-unquote, afford their debt service, meaning they can make the payment, the monthly payment, that means to them that they can, quote-unquote, afford the underlying asset. And in this case, it would be the property, the house, the home. This is what low interest rates do. They distort markets. They make you believe things that simply aren't true. You might be able to tread water for a while, but then, boom, something goes, especially if you're an adjustable rate mortgage, which, of course, was a bad lesson learned a decade ago with the subprime crisis. Well, don't worry. Those same problems are just elsewhere in the economy, and they are back in the housing sector once again, just not to the same degree. But they're in the corporate debt space. They're in the auto loan market. They're back in the housing market, and a whole host of other places too, which we talk about all the time as well. I think this is a travesty because younger people, younger generations, they're not buying homes because they can't afford it. They're coming out of college with 10, 20, 50, some people with 6 figures worth of debt. What are they going to do? Oh, yeah, honey, let's take on a mortgage of a house that is more expensive than it otherwise should be because we have a Federal Reserve that is printing money like it's going out of style because it is. And that causes inflationary pressures on asset prices. We see it in the stock market. We see it in the bond market. The currency markets are all screwed up. Housing markets inflated, especially in larger cities. We talked about that, I believe, earlier this week with the housing crisis, and, well, not even a housing crisis, a homeless crisis, if you will, over in Seattle, the 60-minute special that focused on that. People with full-time jobs, some of them, full-time jobs, electing to live in a tent or electing to live in their van as opposed to buying a house because they can't afford it or going in an apartment. Some of them could make the rent, but they say, I don't want to live hand to mouth. I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. So good for them. This is supposedly the greatest economy ever in the history of the United States. And you have people with full-time jobs living in tents and living in their vans because they don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. Now, of course, they could move, but, they have their family, friends there. That's the city they love, whatever. Okay. You get the point. It's not good. From 31 in 1981 to 47 years of age in 2019. And it's likely only going to get worse because the Federal Reserve continues to push interest rates lower, which is going to have the effect of increasing asset prices once again, which they are. They're continuing to go up. They're going up at a slower rate. They're going up at a slower rate, but they're still going up. I hope you people are starting to understand what's going on here. You want prices to be affordable, not your debt payment. You want prices of the asset to be affordable. Now, of course, you can lock in a long-term rate, and if you're smart with your money and you got stable employment, you might be able to manage it, and a lot of people do. And that's the way to do it. There's smart debt and there's stupid debt. But a lot of people in this country reach for the stars. They want to live like the Joneses, not realizing that the Joneses can't even keep up with themselves. And that's the problem. Everybody's got to look good for Facebook and Instagram. You don't need that much. Learn to be happy with what you got. You can work hard and strive for things and have the ability to have them, but that should not be the end goal. Materialism should not be the end goal. But people in their 30s not being able to buy a home, or in their 20s not being able to buy a home like they used to only 30 years ago, it's not good, folks. It's not good at all. Well, guess what our German friends are doing? They are now starting to charge all of their retail clients negative interest rates. Wow, who didn't see that one coming? These banks have pushed off for, I guess, as long as they could to not charge their customers, the people with checkings and savings accounts at their banks, interest to have their money at that bank. So no, we're not going to do that. Why don't they want to do that? Why didn't they do that for quite a while? Because they don't want to lose the business. But now things continue to deteriorate. The ECB continues to go deeper and deeper into negative interest rate territory, continues with their quantitative easing bond buying purchases, 20 billion euros a month for God knows how long. And now these German banks are forced, quote unquote, forced to charge their customers interest. Instead of being paid interest on that money that's in the bank, which, by the way, the banks are supposed to make money off of, they're now charging you. They're now charging you. Do you want that here, folks? I don't think so. But you know who does, don't you? Your president, Donald J. Trump. He wants negative interest rates here. Give me that money. I want that money. Give me that money. It's your money. It's your money. You want him to have it? Write him a check. Donate to his campaign. Don't forcibly take it out of my paycheck or out of my bank account. Don't do it. I mean, that in and of itself is problematic. That in and of itself should be disqualifying to be the president of the United States, in my personal opinion, because I understand the problems that come with it. And if you listen to this podcast, I would hope that you too understand the problems that come with negative interest rates, these central banks messing in all of these affairs, and Donald Trump couldn't be happier, at least presumably, with interest rates going lower. And guess who that helps personally too? Donald Trump. Why? Because he's in the real estate market. He gets lower borrowing costs, and the prices of his real estate go up. Interesting, isn't it? When he was candidate Trump, I liked what he was saying. What was he saying when he was a candidate? These low interest rates are causing artificial bubbles. They're destroying wealth. All this stuff that I believe in and talk about here on a daily basis. He became president of the United States? Nope, screw that. I never said that. I never said that. That's not what I think. It's not how I feel. It's not good policy. What is good policy, however, is doing a 180, cutting interest rates, going into negative territory, and going back to quantitative easing. It's a crime, folks. It's a crime. It's stealing your wealth. And this isn't just falling on Donald Trump. This was for a long time. But the pedal has really been put to the metal since the great financial crisis. So you got Bush, you got Obama, and now you have Trump. You had Ben Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, the former chairman of the Federal Reserve, and now you got Jay Powell. And, of course, a whole host of other people there, too. It's not just their decision. This is theft. You okay with that? I'm not, but maybe you are. $1 trillion deficits. And we're not even in a recession yet, at least not technically or officially yet. Trade deals that we have no idea where they stand. It's day to day. I don't even like talking about them anymore, but they're market moving. They are still market moving, very much to my surprise. Very much so. But people don't seem to care. The machines that are scouring the internet that are looking for these BS headlines, they don't care. They don't know any better. If then, if positive, buy. If negative, sell. And most of the time it's positive, so it's buy. When those machines learn, or when humans take over once again and they all go sell, regardless of what's being said, because they're tired of the BS and they want action, where's the beef? Look out below. $1 trillion deficits, farmers being hit with multi-year high bankruptcies. We have manufacturing in contraction. We have services in the country rolling over. We have construction in contraction. We have transports in contraction. We have the global auto sector slowing down, very much so in Germany and elsewhere. It will be coming here to a theater near you as well. But somehow this is the greatest economy ever in the history of the United States. And somehow this stock market continues to grind higher. Well, we know why. Because they're printing counterfeit money. They're just printing it and throwing in tens of billions of dollars per day to keep this thing going. No matter what happens, just keep printing money and keep it moving. Remember, in September, this was a one-off thing. It was the end of the third quarter. The Treasury had some bills and notes coming due. It's temporary. We said BS. The hell it is. Not even close. And we've been dead on ever since. It's been escalating like we told you it would. I told you it was going to be escalating back in July, right before they cut interest rates for the first time since the great financial crisis. Very timely here at the Capital News, we seem to usually be. Well, this time's no different. They're going to continue to put the pedal to the metal. It's going to get interesting to see what they do next week in regards to interest rates. If the stock market keeps going up, which it has recovered since that 2-day, pullback a little bit. Nothing dramatic, by the way. Of course, moved by the BS trade headlines. But if the market is where it is, then the Federal Reserve's unlikely to cut interest rates next week. But if we do see some major pullback over the next few days, then maybe they will. Of course, we have the jobs number coming out tomorrow. If that is, dismal, maybe they'll use that for justification to cut interest rates once again. Time will tell. We'll know a lot more tomorrow, I think, as to what the Federal Reserve is going to do. If it's a decent jobs number, then they have really no justification to do it. They don't have any justification to do it anyway, so I guess it really doesn't make a difference. But at least trying to apply logic to all of this, which I don't know why I do, but I'm logical-minded, I guess. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense what's going on here, except that it's all a fraud, and they're just trying to kick the can further down the road because nobody wants to take responsibility for what is ultimately going to come, what is ultimately going to happen. And all of these malinvestments that are out there, all of these zombie companies that exist globally, they're going to get wiped out, and they're going to get wiped out quickly. and you think this is bad, going from 31 years of age to 47 years of age to being the median age here in the country to buying a house, you ain't seen nothing yet. You ain't seen nothing yet. Also, a follow-up to yesterday's story in regards to the Wall Street Journal reporting that officials within the White House and the Defense Department were readying 14,000 U.S. troops in ships and other hardware to be shipped over to the Middle East to deter an attack by Iran. Donald Trump tweeted out earlier today that that is fake news. So this is the Wall Street Journal. A lot of people, especially more conservative, right-leaning newspaper, especially the editorial page, are they fake news too? I don't know. I hope this isn't the case. I hope that we are not about to send thousands of troops over to the Middle East in ships and other hardware. I hope that's not the case. But time's going to tell on that one too. Because like I said yesterday, and like I've said many times before, when all else fails, take them to war. It's a distraction. It gets people wound up. Maybe there's a little bit of patriotism for it, but it's serious business. These are lives on the line, and we should never be for war. We should be for peace. Shouldn't be afraid to go to war if we have to defend ourselves, but we should be for peace first and foremost. And I hope the president, when he says that that is fake news, that it is fake news, because I don't want that to be true. We don't need another war. We can't afford it, and we shouldn't want it. Articles of Impeachment cometh. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, leave your comments. We do love hearing from you. This is the Capital News. I am Alex Koritis. Godspeed.